Welcome to the latest edition of the Jungle Juice podcast. I'm Sam Gormley. He's Mick Nelson. Mick, happy Eric Guycheck days away from the Bengals taking on the Patriots, or Billy Price, Marquise Flowers,
53.
Thomas Howard, may he rest in peace, Bo Harris.
Dude, R.I.P. He had one really good season for us.
Yeah, I think he was with the Bengals for 2 years maybe, and first year I think was really good. And then what was it? Injuries maybe that second year? I don't even really.
I thought he was just on a 1-year deal, and then he signed for a lot more money elsewhere.
And maybe that's it. I'm trying to remember now. My Thomas Howard. It was more of one of those things though. When I saw his name pop up on the history of Bengals. No, he played 2 years for the Bengals, but he only played one game the second year. So maybe he got hurt.
Is that the ACL year?
2012.
Yeah, maybe he must have gotten hurt. I don't know. But yeah, happy Thomas Howard days away. R.I.P. Do we have a 53 right now?
No, there's not.
I haven't seen that number used for a while.
So it's funny you say that because I was looking at this earlier, and that's why I was doing kind of a secondary hesitation when you said this, because I just looked it up and it said there was a guy on last year's team, and now I got to pull up this list because this man, he does not exist, Mick. I've never heard this man before on last year's team. Tala Pesufea. Huh? That's not a real person. Apparently, he was cut. And this is the interesting part on this, is that he was cut from the Bengals September the 12th of last year, which is weird because that would be post 53-man cuts. So it's just weird. I have no memory of this guy. And I'm almost wondering if Pro Football Reference has a glitch in the system or something, because he doesn't have any stats or anything. They don't even have anything based on where he went to college on Pro Football Reference. Tautala Pesafea Jr. And he went to Arizona State here.
I'm not going to ask you to even write that in the private chat here. That's not worth my time.
No, it is not. You can follow him on Instagram, though. Apparently played at Arizona State. So that's the 53 man until 2. And it is perfect that we are 53 days until. We're going to say that we planned it this way. But we're 53 days till kickoff. So today we're going to be going through our projections for the 53-man roster, because I think both of us realized in doing this exercise that there's some interesting. Rory's here too. Hi, Rory.
Rory's barking. Yep.
There's some interesting discussions to be had that the Bengals front office is going to be having throughout. And it's also really hard to predict these because you never know who the preseason darling is going to be. And then 2, you never really know who is going to get hurt, who's going to have the preseason injury and so on, because there's always going to be at least one when we look in there. But that'll be coming up here on today's show. We're also going to talk a little Tee Higgins. We are going to talk Amarius Mims, the Bengals fan survey that's done by The Athletic. That's done. The results are out. We're going to break that down. And then also Ring of Honor will probably be released this week. We are going to go back over who we voted for, but then also give our prediction for what we actually think will happen later on in the show as well. Make sure you follow us on our social media channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of the different ways for us to do it. We're also on your favorite podcasting platform. Make sure that when you do that, give us a 5-star rating on either iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, however you listen to us. Please give us a 5-star rating. It helps other people find our show. So we look forward to that. Mick, Tee Higgins made big news on Sunday. Ian Rappaport says, guess what? The Bengals are probably not going to get an extension done with him by the deadline that passed on Monday.
I was so shocked.
In other surprising news.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
I don't even know.
Every time. You need a.
No, in other surprising news, Joe Burrow shaved his head, I guess. Isn't that something? Nothing is surprising.
Is the head shave real? I don't
know.
What's his name? Josh Mason shared it. He I guess he leads the second biggest Bengals group on Facebook. Usually I trust what he says, though, or what he posts is pretty factual, though. So.
Yeah, I don't know if he did or not, but still, this Tee Higgins thing, I just find it funny because it's not surprising at all.
No.
Like, no one should be surprised if you have followed anything in this. The Tee Higgins almost guaranteed. I mean, I would set it at what, 1% chance he'll be a Bengal next year, and 1 I think is being very generous.
Yeah, I mean that is generous. Less than 1. There's a non-zero chance, but it's pretty close to 0 at this point.
Because I think I saw somebody ask the question in the Houday Nation group, I think over the weekend. Somebody said, what would Tee Higgins have to do to come back to Cincinnati this year? And my answer is he'd have to suck. Because if he has a great year, he's going to price himself out of any chance. And I don't think there's any chance that he's a Bengal next year, but I think the only scenario is if he would be awful or, God forbid, he'd get hurt.
See, I know that the Bengals front office is conservative and they won't do this. I don't know if the Eagles might, with the Eagles signing A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and making it work with Hurd, Smith, and A.J. Brown, that maybe they do think there is a path forward. But the fact that the Bengals have not had the greatest of relations with T's agent, David Mulligetta, that's not a great sign. I don't think we've ever worked a second contract with any of his clients. The other notable ones, Jesse, and I don't know if have we had any more.
I'm going to look that up while you're talking.
So, but the Eagles have also been like a very what do you want to call it, cutting edge, a very visionary. They've been a more visionary front office where they've tried to where they've put the investment into making those things work, and then they'll just cycle out the defense every 4 years or every year, a couple positions here and there with players from Georgia. They'll just do that. But the Bengals front office just doesn't run like that. They're a very conservative front office. They are technically the poorest franchise in the NFL monetarily. I don't even think anybody. Actually, Mark Davis might be the poorest owner in the NFL. It's one of those two. But yeah, they're conservative with their funds. They don't have unlimited funds like the Walton family, who just purchased the Broncos, or that man-child that's the owner of the Carolina Panthers.
Tepper.
Yeah, David Tepper. Yeah, that's.
Are you going to get smacked at a restaurant by him when we go to Carolina here in a couple of weeks?
I hope to God that would be worth it. Get slapped in the face by a billionaire hedge fund guy.
Good pub for the pod too.
Yeah. I hope it happens. I don't think we're going to be hanging out in the same place as David Tepper, though, on Saturday.
Then again, I feel like he's the kind of guy, though, that's going to feel like he has to get with the fan. You know what I mean? Like he's got to reconnect with the fan, and he might just be at I don't even know what the Charlotte bar is, like at the Holy Grail, or something. The pinnacle Cincinnati bar scene or whatever it might be. I just find it funny. But I don't think with this Tee Higgins thing, anything is surprising at all. At all. And in all seriousness, I'm just looking forward to being done talking about it.
Yeah, I'm ready to just rip the band. Just trade them. just rip the Band-Aid off.
That's not gonna happen with it. But yeah, I just think, nothing that is going to happen now is going to be surprising. Everything has been projected. And I just find it funny that the national media just keeps on being like, well, it happened again. Oh, my goodness. And Bengals fans are just like, yeah, we kind of knew this was going to happen.
What's going to happen with the jellyfish tank? That's a big deal.
I mean,
I not know about T's jellyfish tank.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that there's jellyfish movers, right?
Well, you can move the jellyfish, but that tank was like, I mean, yeah, he also makes millions of dollars every year and just got paid $23 million. So that might be a question.
And let's be real, he's probably going to sign a contract for $25 million a year, at least, if not more. Because I mean, if he goes there and has, let's just say he pulls in, 1,300 yards this year, and has an all-pro level year. I don't think he would, because I think it would have to be an injury to Jamar Chase down the realm. But let's just say Tee Higgins goes off. I mean, there's no saying that he could push 30 mil. With how this wide receiver contract market keeps exploding, you really don't know what's going to happen with it. So I think he's going to have enough money to move his jellyfish.
Well, he's going to move the jellyfish. That tank, though, is a work of art. That's actually, that tank was installed by somebody I went to high school with.
Really?
I believe I have it on it. I have somebody from high school told me that. I don't know if it's correct.
You have a source?
People I went to high school with, but he's got a big following on TikTok. He's got like over 1 million or 2 subscribers. He's got an eel pit in his basement. It's crazy.
Tee Higgins does?
No, this guy from high school. But
interesting.
Tee Higgins does not have an eel pit in his basement.
I was going to say, I just didn't know that if he did or didn't. I just would have found that very interesting. In other contract news, Amarius Mims has not signed his deal yet.
Yeah, he's held out longer than Caleb Williams.
Yep, Caleb Williams, I think, signed his deal earlier this afternoon.
Yep.
To me, this is kind of twofold. For one, and I think I can probably speak for you in saying this, I'm not worried. This deal's going to get done. But isn't it a little weird, because these contracts, it's not like, hey, thanks for joining us, Mark. It's not like there's any real wiggle room. These are all set in stone for the most part. And it's just I find it very interesting that why these players hold out.
Yeah, I would assume it's probably in the details of the contract. I bet the money's probably fine. But also it's a rookie contract. There's not really, I feel like there's not much wiggle room on the end of the rookies. So I don't know. It's got to be incentives though. That has to be what they are talking about, or what they're not in agreement upon yet. But that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I find it weird. I'm not worried about it, even in the least with it. I'm not going to be able to make Junk Jam on Saturday for Bengal Gyms. Mick, did you end up getting tickets to it or not?
Well, I was going to get tickets, and then I found out, College Football 25 was coming out this weekend. So I would go, but I've got a dynasty to start.
See, the full-time job, we have one of our big community events of the entire year is coming up on Saturday. So it was tough for me it's more of one of those things. I don't have to do much with it, but it's more having to be an appearance there. So it just lined up on the worst weekend of the summer. It's like, this is the one weekend that I couldn't have ended up going. But we went a couple of years ago to the one at In Between and had a lot of fun with that as well. Yeah. So if you're going, take a lot of pictures and so on. I want to feel like I'm there, because it looks like Bengal Jim, he's done a great job. I mean, it's a stacked cast. So I'm jealous of those who are going to be able to go, and it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
The Bengals fan survey came out, and this is something that Paul Dehner Jr. at The Athletic does every single year, and I find it fascinating. And Mick, I don't know if you know what this is, but what he does is every year he asks pretty much the same questions and allows you to kind of track the trends of Bengals fans and how they answer these with it. So, for example, the first question is a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very confident, 1 being not confident. What is your confidence level in the Bengals moving in the right direction? 1 being you're not confident, 5 being you're very confident. I voted in this because I'm a subscriber to The Athletic. So I'm holding down my number below the computer, and I'll pull it up right when you say yours. We have not talked about this.
I'd give it a solid 4. Now,
it's exactly what I said.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in the front office. Now, I don't know how good the team's going to be this year. I've said before, I've got a lot of worries about how the defense is going to respond to losing DJ Reader. And they don't have a great nose tackle. They only have 1 on the roster, and that's McKinley Jackson. So, yeah, I'm confident in them getting it right over the next couple of years. But I've never really been discouraged from the front office. Even the dog days of the Marvin Lewis era. Maybe it took a while for them to rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe they weren't as responsive with it, but I think they've done a good job, and they've definitely changed their ways to an extent in terms of free agency. They're not going after the big free agents other than the Orlando Brown contract. But they extended Joe Burrow. They made him the highest paid quarterback in the league. They're willing to spend money.
And they've always been willing to spend money.
Yeah. They're just, I think they're very selective with who they do it, who they spend their money on.
Yes, and I think they've learned their lessons from some of the mistakes that they've made, especially kind of the Dunlap and Geno deals might have been part of the reason as to the dip there right at the turn of the last decade and so on. So I found it very interesting with this is that it was a 50% drop, whereas last year, 72% of fans answered 5. This year, 30% answered a 5. So there is a drop, but most everybody is. I mean, out of this, 58% is 4, 30% is 5. So, I mean, everybody is very confident for the most part in the future of this. We'll go through these next ones really quick with it because I find it interesting as well on this. Duke Tobin, 1 through 5.
5.
You said 5. I went 4. And so it's 20.8% were with you, Mick. 51.7% were with me. Zach Taylor.
And
you already know how I'll answer this.
I'll give him a 4.
And see, for me, that's an easy 5. And 4, you had most, 52%. 5 was 28%. So you're seeing a lot of the level of confidence in this realm. What about ownership as a whole?
I'm gonna give it a 3, maybe a 2.
See, you're interesting because you're starting to trend in that direction as well. 4 was the biggest, but only by 1% over 3, which was 37.6. Lisa agrees with us and says Zach Taylor was a 5. At least agrees with me in that realm. To me, I think last year what he did with Jake Browning was what pushed him to that realm.
For sure.
This is an interesting question as well. And I did not know how to answer this when it was asked. Mick, will the Cincinnati Bengals win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years?
No.
So you're with 19.3%. Last year, only 7% of fans said no. So that number grew a little bit this year. I think I might have said no, but I think that's just me not wanting to get hurt again with it. And so on. Go on.
To kind of explain why. One, winning a Super Bowl is really hard. And I'm not saying we don't have the coaching staff, and especially we don't have the quarterback in order to do it, but it's a really hard thing to do, especially when you might have the greatest quarterback, who ends up being the greatest quarterback of all time, playing in the same conference as you. You're playing him almost, I mean, you played him both times you made the playoffs. I mean, you're 1-1 against him.
Joe Burrow doesn't play himself.
Yeah. But yeah, one, it's hard, and two, it all depends on how we turn over this roster. Essentially, we're going to see. If you thought we saw a lot of change this offseason, you're going to see maybe an unprecedented level of change or a level of roster turnover from 2024 to 2025. You're going to be losing a lot of guys. You're going to be losing potentially Mike Hilton. You're going to be losing. I'm losing track of names. Give me 1 second. I got a list of people here.
I mean, Mike Hilton,
Tee Higgins, BJ Hill's going to be gone. And I think they've done a good job at replenishing BJ Hill's position for sure. Why is it showing Amarius Mims as a free agent?
Because technically he hasn't signed a contract.
He hasn't signed his tag. Okay. But yeah, you're going to see a decent amount of people leave. Who knows if we move on from Trey after this year too? Yeah, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of change in the next couple of years. It's all going to depend on how they turn over this roster, and I'm kind of confident in it, but it's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, the NFL is really hard to consistently win, especially when you have a quarterback who is making the amount of money that Joe Burrow makes and deserves to make. I mean, Joe Burrow deserves to make that much money. There were a couple other questions on this list. We don't have to dive into those. I found it interesting, but really the last one was maybe the most interesting to me. And we've not discussed this. And I'm curious, too, you watching at home, to leave us a comment below to see how you would answer this question. Who do you view as the Bengals' most bitter rival right now?
Bitter? Like, who's both sides being bitter, or somebody's bitter?
That is the question. That is the question. Who do you view as the Bengals' most bitter rival right now?
It's got to be the Chiefs right now.
So you said the Chiefs. And it might still be me, and Lisa agrees with you in saying, I still went with the Steelers. I don't know that it's necessarily that realm. To me, that's probably more of the fan base, more as the players, because I don't know that there's necessarily that Steeler hatred amongst these players, because most of that on both sides is gone. As far as in the heyday of that rivalry, about a decade ago. The Chiefs, though,
I think with the Steelers, the bitterness is really just one-ended. I think we're bitter at the Steelers way more than they're bitter towards us. Yeah.
But still, it's most bitter is can be a one-sided thing as well. Chiefs are number one though at 41%. Ravens second at 33%, followed by the Steelers at 21%, and then the Browns down at 5%. To me, I know you are much more on the Brown hate train
for other reasons.
Correct.
That we're not going to talk about here. But yes.
If you know, you know. Maybe decisions made by quarterbacks. But I found that very interesting. But last year, the Chiefs 60% of the answer. So you've seen a little bit of a shift down and more towards the Ravens, which is interesting. And I'm not sure if part of that does play towards some comments made after the game, the Thursday night game, where you had the complaints from some sides there blaming Logan Wilson for the injury to Mark Andrews, and then also a little bit of fan chatter, which happens anytime, about Joe Burrow with his injury as well. I'm not sure if that plays into that. And they've been good.
Yeah, they've both been kind of neck and neck in the division for the past few years. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good number too. But I mean, I think you definitely remember watching this past KC game. That was scrappy. Like there was dare I say, if I remember correctly, some Bush League stuff going on in that game between the players. They don't like each other right now.
And see, for me, I don't know that there will ever be anything and I'm answering this as a fan. There will never be a game. I mean, there are some instances where I would rather go 2-15, but beat the out of the Steelers both times, and I would almost be a happy man in a realm, just because I despise that team and that aspect of it. No, not really, but still, that would almost, I would rather go 2-15, but beat the crap out of the Steelers both times you play them, than go 7-10. And that's just, but lose the Steelers both.
I mean, I'd probably pick that also, because you probably get the number one draft pick. So yeah.
Yes, and next year, gosh, I don't even know. We went through this. I don't even know who the number one pick is going to be next year. You'd probably be able to trade it for a King's ransom.
Right now, James Pierce is the.
Is that the guy from LSU?
No, Tennessee.
Oh, that's right, the edge rusher. There's a really good offensive tackle coming out from LSU as well. That'll be something to keep in mind. So just go ahead and mark him, LSU. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead and mark him in for the Bengals, because it's an LSU guy, early pick, first round. It's got to go that way. We're 53 days away from kickoff. So what better time to go through and do our 53-man roster projection? Surely this is going to be 100% accurate, because nothing is going to change between now and they do these roster cuts. What, the end of August, early September, whenever the date is that those are going to. So I went by position, Mick. I'm hoping that's how you did it as well. Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Starting off with the hardest decision to make, the quarterback room. I know you're cutting Burrow and keeping Rocky Lombardi, correct?
Yeah.
Or did you have Burrow edging out Lombardi?
I had Burrow edging out Lombardi.
Wow. Tight battle in camp there. And then Jake Browning. I mean, I don't think there is a single room on the team that is more set in stone.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could say wide receiver. Maybe. But even then, you could see something weird with one of those undrafted guys having just a blowing up in camp with it. In fact, Lisa chimes in and says, not sure how I feel about his haircut. If it is a buzz cut, how do you, like, are you going to need to see it on how you feel about it? Or do you like swipey hair Burrow? Or how do you feel about the haircut?
I like winning Joe Burrow. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care how he dresses. As long as he's winning football games and he's not doing, stuff off the field that the Cleveland Browns quarterback does, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that aspect. Running back, how many running backs do you have making the team?
I have 4. I think they had 4 last year. I think 3 of them are pretty solidified, and then I do have a little roster swap battle for this 4th one.
Interesting.
So,
before you do your roster battle, I'll have our first disagreement and say 3. I think they're going to keep 3 running backs. There's been precedent in the Zach Taylor era. This happened in 2019 and 2021 as well. But this is one, though, that I think the aspect you're going to bring up is one that I think is going to be fascinating to watch in the preseason, because I think there's so much of it that can change with the new kickoff rule. And I don't know if that's the aspect that you're thinking in your roster battle, but I think the name that I am cutting, just because he's never shown me anything, but he might have a spot on this team for the reason enough of kickoff battles, is Chris Evans.
Yeah. So that is my roster spot battle. I think for my RB4, that's going to be the battle between him and Noah Cain. I think the front office is probably looking for any reason to move on from Chris Evans. He has just seen his snap share dramatically decline from what it was in 2021. And I thought he played pretty well in 2021. So I don't know if this is a personality issue or not. But he hasn't really played much on offense the past couple of years. And the Bengals had an undrafted free agent signing that I really liked for this year, Noah Cain out of LSU. He's never really had a future role in the LSU offense, but from what we've seen, he's graded really well. 84 run grade, 84 offensive grade, averaged about 5 yards a carry both of his years at LSU. I think he could be a dark horse to make the team.
Yeah, I think Chris Evans, to me, the telling point on him is he had the same amount of snaps that me and you did, Mick, after week 12 last year.
Mm-hmm.
None. Not one. And what's interesting, though, is between weeks 8 and 11, he went 19, 20, 23, 21. So he was getting some playing time during that stretch and then just tanked out. And I think in that stretch, he was inactive for all of those games.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is very telling as to being. But I like the Cain guy. But I'm fascinated now with guys like him. And you're going to see this a lot with a lot of these roster battles. And I think it's why the 53-man is going to become harder and harder to predict, is the new rules when it comes to the practice squad of being able to pull guys up. And I think it's easier to push guys through to the practice squad because of that in a realm. That's where I think Noah Cain could be a guy that they could easily slide onto the practice squad with it.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Wide receivers. Did you go 6?
Yeah, I did go 6, and I think this is probably the second easiest position to predict.
Chase, Higgins, Burton, Yoshi, Irwin, Jones. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't see anybody even sniffing those guys to even battle for a roster spot. Like,
hey, you got to remember my guy that and it was funny because Paul Dehner Jr. about a month and a half, he must have listened to our podcast because he wrote an article about this guy saying that he is going to be the preseason darling for the Cincinnati Bengals this year, and that is one Cole Burgess. To me, the wild card with a guy like him, and I just mentioned it because I don't think any of us really know how it's going to be, is that kickoff rule.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he is, to me, I didn't have him making the team. But he's somebody that if he comes out in the preseason and shows that he is a freak athlete, maybe they do. Maybe they do make a move like that. And I don't know. I'm not predicting it, but I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
I think he'll be a camp darling. I think he will. I
Correct.
think he's going to show out in camp. But
and everybody's going to be very mad when he gets cut.
Yeah, and then he'll be on the practice squad more than likely than not.
Correct. He'll spend a year on the practice squad, and it'll be one of those guys that in 5 years we're going to say, remember that off season with Cole Burgess?
He's going to be the new Dane Sanzenbacher. People seem to bring that guy up quite a bit.
I was going to say, what's the guy's name who ended up getting the start, and his name now escapes me, from Troy, who got the start for AJ Green, and I think it was 2019. What is his name? He just retired, didn't he? Didn't he? Troy,
man, this is going to kill me.
Bengals. Now this is, I got not Troy Walters. That is not Troy Walters. Damian Willis.
Yeah.
Damian Willis. Yes, because he played, he made the team because AJ Green was hurt. And that was literally his cup of tea in the NFL. So I just found it kind of interesting along the lines of that. But yeah, so to me, Cole Burgess might be Damian Willis in a couple of years. Tight ends, Mick.
So last year they only kept 3, but there were a lot of tight ends on the roster this year where I don't think you can really cut all of them, or not all of them. But I don't think you can cut to the point where you had 3 like you did last year. So I have Eric All, Mike Gesicki, Tanner McLaughlin, and Drew Sample. I do think Tanner Hudson does get the cut.
Interesting.
Because there's just not enough room. You have 2 rookies who have a full 4-year contract that they have team control over, and they're cheap. You sign Mike Gesicki to a 1-year deal. He's been featured in in a lot of social media posts from the Bengals, which I think kind of is a telling sign that he's not in jeopardy of not making the team. And then Drew Sample just signed a 3-year deal with the team, so I doubt you're going to cut him. I'm guessing this is where you're going to think they're going to go 5 tight ends.
To me, I don't know. Like, this is one of the weirder ones because the Tanner Hudson part is fascinating because I can see where Lisa's reaction right now. She says,
we love Tanner Hudson, by the way.
But I also see with your realm of Eric All, you didn't draft him in the 4th round to cut him.
No.
Tanner McLaughlin, you didn't draft a second tight end in the sixth round, right? 6th round to cut him.
Yeah.
Drew Sample's not going anywhere. Mike Gesicki's not going anywhere. So Tanner Hudson is kind of the weird odd man out. But what did Tanner Hudson do last year that Irv Smith did not do other than produce? Play football. He made a relationship with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
So here is, right now I have 5. And I know that it's not a popular take. But here's my wild card. And it's what would not shock me. I'm not going to put it on here, but it's not going to shock me as Eric All begins on the PUP list.
Mm-hmm.
where they can almost, even if he is 95%, that will allow for them to kind of hide him away and keep the 4 tight ends that they want and keep Hudson and keep McLaughlin and keep Sample and keep Gesicki. And then you keep all on PUP, which I think he's on there for the first 8 weeks of the season, I think is the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And odds are one of those 4 tight ends will be hurt.
Yeah. Pretty safe bet.
And therefore, Eric All slides in, takes that spot, and goes from there. But if not, I'm going to put him at 5, but I don't think I'm right on that. I think the PUP is the aspect that I'm going with it. I know we were discussing this before the show.
That's a really good point to bring up, is Eric All's injury, that he's definitely not going to be ready to start the season. I think that's a very insightful tidbit there, Sam.
I bring it once every 6 months, so you're welcome. Offensive line. How many offensive linemen did you go with?
I went with 10. Actually, no, I went with... Wait a minute. I did go with 10. I went with 10.
I went with 9. So you got your 5... Well, we'll say your 6 starters. We'll just say 6 starters.
Yeah.
Where you're combining Mims and Brown, and then you've got Orlando Brown, you've got Cordell Volson, you've got Ted Karras, you've got Alex Kappa. To me, those 6, nothing that they can do will take them off this roster.
I'm pretty sure I know what your cut's going to be here then.
No, I don't think you know that. Cody Ford, I think, is safe. Sorry to your wife. I'm sure your wife wants to send Cody Ford to the sun. Yes.
Yeah, probably.
But Cody Ford's going to make the team. Matt Lee, we're big Matt Lee guys.
Yes.
I think he's going to make the team because he's a backup center and they have literally nobody else other than Trey Hill. But Trey Hill, he's on the cutting block.
That's who I thought you were going to cut. I do have Trey Hill on my roster.
Interesting. So he might have been your 10th. The 9th, another one that would not shock me for me if he gets cut. But to me, he is the Brandon Tate of the Bengals now. And by that, I mean every single year, and I might have just been the only one, I wanted to cut Brandon Tate. I was a Brandon Tate hater. Is Jackson Carman.
I have him on my roster.
I do too. But it would not shock me if he gets cut. But to me, they're just going to hope that he figures it out. And I don't think he will. I think we've seen enough, but I think he makes the roster. So you have
your odd man out is the same as mine.
So Trey Hill is out on mine. But who do you have that I do not?
Well, no, I do not have Deontay Smith.
I do not either.
No, so I have Karras, Lee, Hill, Kappa, Ford.
So you have Hill, and I do not.
Yes. Okay, that's what it is.
And Lisa, in a realm here, she says, I've seen enough of Carman. Honestly, I have 2.
I agree, but they don't have a lot of tackles available. I mean, the position battle for the 4th offensive tackle is going to be Jackson Carman versus Deontay Smith, and I think the coaching staff has shown more confidence in Carman through snaps played. Deontay Smith has not played. I don't think he's played. Oh, wait, why am I looking at defense? Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean,
no way.
Deontay Smith did not play a snap at all last year.
Okay. I didn't think he did.
He played 28 snaps in 2022 and 64 in 2021. So in his career, he has played not even 100 snaps.
Yeah.
Deontay Smith. He was a guy that I liked the pick when it happened. And this could be where we could have the extra conversation that we've had. I mean, Mix, I think you've preached it. You were mentioning my water is wet line. Your anti-Frank Pollock line is your go-to of complaining about Frank Pollock every single podcast. And it's warranted with guys like Deontay Smith because they've not done a darn thing. Now, how much of that is that Deontay Smith just doesn't have any talent, and how much of that is Frank Pollock, we may never really know. But at some point, you got to call a spade a spade. One of the wild cards for me is a guy like Devin Cochran, who was injured a lot last year. Tore his ACL, of being somebody that could sneak their way on and fight a guy like a Jackson Carman. But to me, that's a prime practice squad candidate of somebody that you can slide in there, because I can't imagine a team wanting to sign a 9th offensive lineman to their 53-man roster, especially the 9th offensive lineman from the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. And then to circle back with Trey Hill, I mean, they don't have a lot of guard depth either. Like
They don't.
They only have 4 guards right now on the official roster: Alex Kappa, Cody Ford, Jackson Kirkland, and Cordell Volson. Jackson Kirkland's definitely not making the team. I'm surprised he's even on the practice squad. But Trey Hill, I mean, he has experience at guard as well as center from his days in Georgia. And they're going to need another guard on the roster. So where else are you going to pull from, unless if you can find somebody else who gets dropped or cut or from other NFL rosters. So
you've got Jackson Carman
as a guard, no. That guy is playing tackle. We've seen him play guard. Like, he's a much better tackle than he is a guard.
Like, it honestly would shock me if you would almost put Amarius Mims at guard before you put Jackson Carman back at guard.
Yeah.
Which I would love to see it's like they were talking of doing I heard Paul Dehner Jr. on his podcast last week saying that the Bengals could do some off-balance looks as far as the offensive line. And he just said, just think, what if they just say, screw it. Let's just do this weird off-balance thing and put Trent Brown, Mims, and Orlando Brown all on the same side for one play. Let's just create the behemoth of the wall on the left side of the Bengals offensive or the right side of the Bengals offensive line, and let's just go.
Yeah,
nobody getting around.
That'd be interesting.
It was just kind of a funny discussion there. Defensive line. I combined these into edge and tackle and defensive tackles. I don't know if you did the same, but I have 10.
Yes.
Did you have 10 as well, or did you have a different number?
No, I had. That's where I trimmed the roster down. I have 9.
Okay, so this is where we kind of differ a little bit. So Hendrickson makes the team.
Yes.
Tim Hubbard makes the team. Miles Murphy makes the team. Sheldon Rankins, B.J. Hill, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson. I think those are your 100% locks. They're making the team. Now, you don't think this player is a lock. I think he absolutely is, and that's Joseph Osai.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a camp battle between Joseph Osai and Cam Sample. My bad. I'm losing it right now. I think there's going to be a camp battle between them two. The other edge rusher, Cedric Johnson, they drafted him in the 6th round. They have 4 years of roster control for Cedric Johnson, so I think he is a lock to make the team. So you've got Cam Sample and Joseph Osai. Both were drafted in the same year. Both are in the last year of their contracts. And I think the coaching staff has shown more confidence in one over the other. This is where you're probably keeping both of them, right? Is that your decision? And they're cutting Zach Carter.
Yes, you're welcome. But I'm also cutting. I'm also cutting the guy from Ole Miss, whose name you just said his name, and now it's
Cedric Johnson.
Cedric Johnson, and I'll let you finish your point, and I'll explain as to why I'm cutting him after.
So pretty much, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with taking Sample over Osai. I think Osai is the better player. I think he's got better pass rush numbers, is better tackler, all the above. But the coaching staff has just shown more confidence in Cam Sample. We've seen a lot more of Cam Sample on the field. Average snaps per game last year, Cam Sample averaged 22. Osai averaged 13 snaps per game played. And I just think that's what what would happen between those two if that's what the roster battle is.
To me, the reason for cutting Cedric Johnson is I feel like that's a position that you can get somebody through to the practice squad. is edge in my eyes. Unless he goes out there and has, a wild preseason. A 6th round edge to me is somebody that you'd be able to slide through, hopefully, to the practice squad. And that's where I did. Because Osai, you're not getting to the practice squad. Cam Sample, maybe.
I don't think you're getting Cam Sample to the practice squad.
But I think out of those 3, when you're ranking most likely to get to the practice squad, number 1 most likely would be Cedric Johnson, and that's why he gets cut.
But you're taking a very big gamble on that. That is a huge gamble to gamble away somebody with 4 years of roster control. Somebody that you drafted. It's not like a 7th round pick. He is a 6th round pick. Don't get me wrong, but it's a pretty big gamble to have somebody you just drafted thrown on the practice squad. I guarantee we weren't the only team scouting Cedric Johnson and liked him when it came to draft time. And also, Cedric Johnson's had more exposure to scouting over the past, 6 months to a year than Osai or Sample. And I'm not saying Osai or Sample would stay on the practice squad either. They've had plenty of NFL tape, plenty of NFL grading. But I think you're going to have to look to move on either Sample or Osai because of the roster control of those two.
The Bengals have been known to let a 5th or 6th round pick, or maybe a 5th round pick, go for somebody that was older and maybe more experienced, and they let a guy go hoping to maybe get him to the practice squad, but instead he gets signed by a team and goes on to have a really good career and still playing right now in the league.
Yeah, there's a little bit of remorse from the front office in that realm.
Oh, good old Jake Elliott. I think we're okay now. We got a couple more years of Fat Randy, which made us all happy. J2 Fele, do you have him making it or not?
No. So pretty much, I think the 10th spot, if I didn't have him keeping 4 tight ends, would have gone to Zach Carter. Unfortunately, between those two, Zach Carter has graded better, and also, again, I'm going to say it again: roster control. He has 2 years. Tufele has 1. The only thing I would keep Tufele over Zach Carter is that Jay Tufele is a nose tackle, and we only have 1 of those.
And that's why he makes my team.
I don't. Yeah, that's a very logical and sound argument.
And that's why he makes my team over Zach Carter. Zach Carter has. Am I going to be the one to? No, you know what? I'm just going to let you. I'm going to throw it away to you. Give us your opinion on Zach Carter, Mick. I'm going to just let you take it. He's your guy to hate on. I'm going to let you have it.
I don't want to hate on him too much, but you ask. Just a disappointment of a 3rd round pick. I think that he was a lot smaller than what I expected him to be in the NFL. I think when you watch the tape in Florida, you were kind of encouraged by it. His grading wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And he actually showed improvement from 2022 to 2023, which I don't think is much to ask for. But I think he's just small. He doesn't get a lot of power on his pass rush. His pass rush run rate's pretty abysmal. I think he's just been a disappointment of a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, so I think that to me is the reason why I am cutting Zach Carter, and I think Tufele makes it. But it would not shock me if Tufele is one of those guys that makes it, but then is cut because another team cuts a better nose tackle. Like a Josh Tupou realm, or somewhere in that realm where they replace Jay Tufele with a better version of Jay Tufele, I guess. I don't know. So I'm keeping Tufele on my roster. So I think that's where we differ a little bit there. So you kept Zach Carter?
No. I went with 9 defensive linemen.
Okay.
Both of them are cut.
Okay, and I went with 10 on my realm. Linebackers. How many did you go with?
I went with 5.
And I did as well. And I'm interested here to see if we have the same 5. So Logan Wilson,
this was
Jermaine
tough.
Pratt, ADG, and Joe Bacci to me are locks. Agreed?
I do not have ADG.
Okay, so we're very different then, I guess. You have Joe Bocci, though.
I do have Joe Bocci.
Who do you have that I do not then? And I'm wondering if we have one of the same names. It's a guy that I talked up a lot after when we did our post-draft podcast because I'm a big fan, and I think he's a steal of an undrafted free agent.
I don't know how I can pronounce his name. Mema Nanjungmeta, linebacker out of Wisconsin, is my rookie undrafted free agent. I'm assuming you did not have him and you had Aaron Casey.
I had Aaron Casey.
So Mema, I'm just going to call him Mema. Mema's graded a lot better than Aaron Casey has in his collegiate career. Also, both played in the same conference, so it's not like there's some type of inflation in that regard. Mema had an 89 defensive grade in 2022, 85 run grade, 89 pass rush grade. His coverage grade wasn't great, but that got significantly better in 2023. Went from a 62 to a 76 grade. Whereas Aaron Casey's grading is not nearly as good. So I would, tend to trust the grades there. And then my other guy is Devin Harper, by the way.
Yeah, no, send Devin Harper to the moon. Not a Devin Harper guy. I still haven't forgiven him from his penalty last year. He was on the team and immediately has like a late hit out of bounds, his first game coming from the Cowboys. I think it was the Cardinals game, if my memory's right, and he's been on my crap list ever since that point. So I went with ADG and Aaron Casey. You went with Muma Jongmeta.
Muma.
I just looked up. Muma is how to say his name.
Okay, Muma.
I went back to my notes from that because I remembered I wrote some notes on him and something specific as to why he did have some red flags. Lots of injuries throughout his career at Wisconsin, but the biggest one that I think is going to be interesting, especially in camp where he is behind the 8 ball, is he had 0 special team snaps at Wisconsin. And when you are linebacker 5 or 4, depending on how you want to do it, you're a special teams guy. That's why you're on the team.
Well, you want to know why he didn't have any special team snaps at Wisconsin? Because he had plenty of defensive snaps at Wisconsin.
But I just find it interesting, though, that does that matter? And I mean, Aaron Casey, to me, too, is the pinnacle of a Cincinnati Bengal. Team captain, second team all Big Ten. And then I brought up the stat, too, when we talked about it after the draft. He averaged 1.7 tackles for a loss last year. Only one other player averaged that much in all of NCAA football. Laiatu Latu, who was the 15th pick.
And Latu is an edge rusher.
Correct. So 1.7 tackles for a loss. So as a linebacker doing that, that's pretty impressive. So I'm going to go Aaron Casey. But again, this is not one of those that I don't think would shock us at all.
What are we moving on to?
Cornerback. How many corners do you have making the team, Mick?
I'm counting 6.
Okay. I have like 5.5. And I'll explain the half.
Because one of them's probably going to be on the PUP list.
No. I hope not. Okay, I know who you're saying. No, I see what you're saying. I think that person, I didn't even count him because I think he is going to be on the PUP list, regardless. So I didn't even put him on the 53. I guess you're talking about DJ Ivey.
Yes, he is on my 53, but he'll start on the PUP list, and maybe that's where they keep Tufele or Carter. That might be where we kind of see that role get filled up, at least on my 53 man.
Dude, you've got some locks on this team. CTB, Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and I think Josh Newton. All of those guys are locks. The interesting position to me to watch is going to be Dejon Anthony, who was a safety, but played some slot corner at Ole Miss against, and now I can't even remember that I'm forgetting his name, the backup slot corner guy from Utah State. He's getting cut, Jalen Davis. And I have Dejon Anthony against Jalen Davis as an underrated backup slot corner position, especially if Dax Hill beats out DJ Turner on the outside where Dax Hill can't be that backup. So I'm keeping Anthony as a 1.5 because he's a safety, but he's kind of a corner. He's like a tweener in there, but I think that's a kind of guy that Lou Anarumo would like a lot of.
Yeah. Here's my question, and I don't really remember this, but when DJ Ivy played against Indy, was he playing slot corner or was he playing outside? I don't really have Oh, wait. There we go. Nope, he only had 2 slot snaps out of 14. So yeah, you can definitely see Dejon Anthony as that slot corner. I don't and with DJ Ivy probably starting the PUP list, that puts him at 6. If DJ Ivy were there, I think one of these guys probably has to get cut, right? I mean, you have 7. I don't know if you're going to carry 7 corners on a roster.
Probably not. But I think DJ Ivy is a pinnacle to be he's the perfect example of a guy that'll be PUP.
Yeah.
Especially because that Colts game was December the 15th or mid-December. You can't imagine that he'd be ready September 10th or whatever date the Patriots game is. And he'll be ready in 53 days. But he might be ready November 1st, which would be when PUP would be up.
Yeah.
And at that point, more than likely, there'll be an injury to at least one of those corners because that's how the NFL works. So you are putting Ivy on your 53.
Yes.
Okay.
But also PUP. I'm going to make one amendment for the PUP here. Ivy is off because of that, and I'll elevate Tyson Anderson to be the next one up.
So moving on to safeties, I have my safeties Stone, Bell, Battle, Anderson. I can see Anderson being a potential cut candidate just because he's going to be the bad luck guy of he can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
But I know he has been a special teams guy that Darren Simmons has liked a lot. And Darren Simmons, there's a good chance he might have the biggest voice in that room because he's been around since Ronald Reagan was president, pretty much. I mean, I think 2001. So, I mean, almost since Bill Clinton was president. So he has a big voice in that room. So it would not shock me if he will be able to fight for Tyson Anderson to make the team. So those are my 4 safeties that I'm keeping. But again, you can kind of count at 4.5, depending on how you want to count Dejon Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so those would be my 4 safeties if DJ Ivy starts on the PUP list, which is more than likely to happen.
Kicker. Long snapper. Okay, we're done. It's done. There's no discussion really to be had about that. Punter. Mick, you went deep into breaking down the tape, I know, on Austin McNamara. You judged his drop angle, his hang time, his analytics and everything as far as his kick speed, right? Hitting power.
I do have some punting stats here, actually.
Oh, Mick's got stats.
Yeah. So I do have Austin McNamara making the team over Brad Robbins.
As do I.
So we'll start with the average yards per punt. Last year, Brad averaged 44.3 yards per attempt, or yards per punt, whatever you want to call it. Austin McNamara averaged 46.5 yards per punt, which is about a 2-yard difference. So I think Austin McNamara does have a better leg there. We look at longest punt, Austin McNamara 59 yards. Brad Robbins 62. So those are pretty close.
But in his career, Austin McNamara did have a 79-yard punt.
Yes. Actually, I'm seeing his longest per PFF is 87 yards.
Interesting.
It's a long punt.
I like yours better. We'll say 87. That sounds a little bit better.
both have pretty close hang time numbers. Brad's are a little bit better. Brad has a 4.24 average hang time. Austin McNamara 4.19 seconds. So
And
I think
that
those are
does
pretty
mean something to
comparable.
Darren Simmons.
It does, but I don't think the numbers are too far off from each other. Actually, last year McNamara had a 4.26 average hang time. The 4.19 is an average over his 5 years in college.
And that's something that shows that he is improving upon that. But I agree that McNamara will be the guy to make the team. It's not going to shock me if it's Brad Robbins. It won't. Because if McNamara isn't a holder, struggles with that aspect.
That's a big aspect to
it is.
It's a huge aspect.
Especially when you have a elite kicker, and the Bengals have an elite kicker. You do not want to do anything that makes him a non-elite kicker. You think back, Evan McPherson in his career as a Cincinnati Bengal has had 2 bad games. 2 that come to mind, at least for me. There might be a third out there.
Well, one of them's a mulligan.
But the reason it's a mulligan is because you threw a factor in there to have and throw off his confidence, as in a long snapper getting hurt. That was the issue there. So that's why I'm kind of saying. And the other one was just a bad day. But it was a bad day for everybody that day. For Mason Crosby as well. Shout out to that Green Bay game. That was still the wildest thing I've ever seen.
It was a great game. It was a good game.
Wild. So those are our 53-man rosters. We, for the most part, I would say, out of our 53 men, I'd say we're probably the same on about 50, 51?
Yeah.
Give or take. So we are really close to the same with it. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see as training camp starts 1 week from today. We'll be able to break down some training camp news and so on. But next week on our show, on our list here, Mick, we'll just produce on air. We had it on our list to break down the offense, go dive deep into some of these names, expectations, and so on. What the revamped Joe Burrow, Dan Pitcher, Jermaine Burton offense could look like. So that'll be next week. And then in 2 weeks on the 31st, defense. All about the defense. And then we start jumping into the preseason. And I'm looking forward to a show in August too, Mick, where we're going to have some discussions. I think we had planned out to dedicate an entire show to talk about the AFC and the Bengals opponents, kind of where the AFC looks. Because I heard a conversation with Paul Dana on his podcast where he asked a guy from CBS Sports, rank the AFC North teams. And it's the hardest division in football by far to rank them, because I legitimately think you could play this division, you could play this season 100 times and have a ton of different results.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the closest division in football. I don't think any other division has competition for that title. Both teams went over 500 last year for a reason. Nobody's seen like huge roster turnover. If anything, the Steelers saw a decent amount, and they probably got better with their quarterback situation. So, yeah, I think that's going to be tough. What's your rankings? Or are we going to talk about that later?
We can use that as the tease, because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I legitimately, I do not know. Because I think there are so many in there. Lisa says Bengals, Ravens, Steelers, Browns. I don't think that's wrong. But I think, Paul Dana brought up a great point. He said that if you take the quarterback position out, which you can't do, obviously, which AFC North team is probably the best? And he said, it's probably the Browns. They might have the better roster. You could make that argument.
But I see what you're saying, yeah.
You could make that argument that the Browns have the best. So then the question is if Deshaun Watson decides that he doesn't want to visit parlors in Houston anymore, or maybe he actually needs to go back to them because that's when he was playing well. But still, if he becomes the quarterback that he was, could the Browns be the team that wins the division? I don't know. I find it interesting, but we'll definitely have a podcast about that in August, because I think it'll be a lot of interesting discussions and storylines, because even like into the Chiefs, like what the hell happened with their offseason? Like, there's a lot to discuss with that. So I look forward to that. But before we wrap up, Mick, the Ring of Honor will probably be released, this year's inductees, before our next podcast, which will be 1 week from tonight. We voted for Lamar Parrish and Dave Lapham. Was our votes for season ticket holders. Who do you think gets in? This is not who do you want. This is who do you think?
I think it's going to be Lamar Parrish and Corey, unfortunately.
I agree. I think that's who it will be. I hope it's Lamar and Dave Lapham.
Same here.
Just because I think Dave Lapham, my man, deserves it. Gosh, he deserves it. Like, and I think that would mean so much to him. So much to Dave Lapham. He deserves to have his names up there on the inside for Paycor Stadium. So I look forward to that.
I think Dave's definitely got a shooter's chance here. Like, he's got, I think so. The longer you've had your season tickets, the more votes you get, right?
Correct.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of old heads in the stadium that love Dave Lapham and everything that he's done for the Bengals and realize how much he deserves it. So I think there's a really good chance he does get it.
And there is a large group like Lisa and you, Mick, who is not ready to vote Corey Dillon yet.
I don't know if I'll ever be ready. It's not because of all the whining and complaining. I just think they're far more deserving players to make the Ring of Honor than Corey Dillon.
One of these days, maybe next summer, if he doesn't get in, next summer we need to find a way to get Corey Dillon on our podcast, and I want you two to go at it. I think it would be great entertainment. Would you be willing to debate Corey Dillon on how good he was?
I feel like debating Corey Dillon is going to be like debating it's going to be like debating a Stairmaster. Like, there's no that man thinks he's the best thing. That man thinks he's the best thing that's ever existed to ever play running back in the NFL. Like, I think he legitimately thinks that.
Yeah, it's hard to. That'll pretty much get close to wrapping us up for this week. Mick, I'm sure. And now, did you wait until the Friday for college football 25?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Did you do have you done your 10-hour free trial yet?
No, there's a free trial.
Yes. If you do EA Play, if you pay for that, which I believe is a part of Xbox Game Pass, you get a 10-hour free trial. So you get to pay 10 hours beforehand. So I've been doing a little bit of that, of playing, and I played a little bit this afternoon, and it's pretty good. It's pretty awesome.
Is the game already, how long did it take to download it?
See, I did it overnight, so I didn't have an issue necessarily to do it. But if you already pre-ordered it, it should already be downloaded.
Goodbye. I'm grabbing my controller.
Okay. So so Mick's going to go play College Football 25. We thank you for joining and watching us today. Remember to follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on there. Remember also, we're on your favorite podcasting platform. Make sure we ask you please to give us a review there. 5-star rating. It helps us out and helps other people get introduced to this podcast as well. Mick, do you have any parting thoughts, or are you too distracted now?
No. Goodbye, everybody. I've got to go. I've got to
figure out if you can actually play the game right now. Thanks everyone for listening today. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, Hoo day.
Hoo day. Thanks for watching.